In any astronomy textbook, it's written that Earth has only one satellite, the Moon, which is absolutely wrong. On March 28, 2023, an employee at the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii discovered a unique object near Earth. Asteroid 2023 FW13 has been accompanying our planet in its orbit around the Sun for over 2,000 years. This is basically the second previously unknown Earth satellite that can be seen only through a powerful telescope. But don't worry, you'll definitely notice it if it suddenly deviates from its orbit. When the celestial rock with a diameter of a whopping 20 m enters Earth's atmosphere, it'll put on an even more spectacular show than the Chelyabinsk meteor. If it happens over a big city like New York, the shock wave will shatter windows in many districts, thus harming tens of thousands of people. And if this most benign neighbor of Earth is capable of such destruction, what about others? In this video, you'll find out how astronomers miss the most enormous comet in space, what object the solar system could play bowling with our planets, and if it's true that deep in space, there are stars capable of burning our Earth to a crisp. And I bet you've never heard of most of these dangerous space neighbors. The solar system itself is full of invisible rocks that could annihilate an entire planet. In 2012, NASA astronomers reported that over the course of 30-something years, they managed to detect more than 500,000 asteroids. But a decade later, that number has now surpassed 1 million. Still, even now, NASA admits there are 2 to 3 times more invisible rocks flying around the solar system, and some of them are dangerously close. On February 27, 2023, researchers at the Isaac Newton Telescope in the Canary Islands discovered a brand new asteroid literally approaching Earth. In less than a month, it came within a distance of about 174,000 kilometers from our planet. That's only half the distance to the Moon's orbit. It may not seem too severe at first glance, but if we compare this space event to darts, the asteroid will be the dart slightly missing the bullseye, but definitely hitting the target. So, in the spring of 2023, we were just a hair's breadth away from a collision with a 70 m wide space rock. That's just a bit bigger than the wingspan of a Boeing 747. But even if it didn't reach the surface and exploded in the atmosphere, let's say over San Francisco, the city would undoubtedly be wiped off the map. The next visit of the city-destructing asteroid is expected on April 4, 2026, but at a distance of over 1 million kilometers. Of course, this calculation doesn't consider the gravitational pull of other celestial bodies, which is entirely unpredictable. But not only individual cities are in danger because of our invisible neighbors. According to Greek myths, once upon a time, the son of the god Helios, Phaethon, took the reins of the chariot that carried the sun across the sky every day. However, the young god couldn't handle the controls and flew too close to Earth, turning entire countries into scorched deserts. And you probably won't be so thrilled to hear that it's also the name of a gigantic asteroid. Astronomers spotted it almost by chance in the early 1980s amidst the stars. And as soon as they calculated Phaethon's trajectory, it immediately made the list of the most dangerous near-Earth objects. Due to its orbit peculiarities, it approaches Earth extremely irregularly, sometimes every few years, sometimes every few decades. The most threatening flyby was recorded on December 17, 2017, when Theon passed within over 10,300,000 kilometers from Earth, roughly equivalent to 27 times the distance between Earth and the Moon. So why are astronomers worried about a potential collision? Well, it's because this asteroid has a diameter of almost 6 kilometers, which can be already considered a potential destroyer of whole continents, let alone cities. For now, NASA is sure that for at least the next 400 years, Theon won't turn any continent into a scorched desert. However, this calculation doesn't consider the Yarovsky effect. This effect refers to the change in an asteroid trajectory due to uneven heating from the sun. While this effect is incredibly weak, it's enough to cause asteroids to deviate from their orbits by tens of kilometers over many years. That's precisely why Phaethon can still be a threat in the long run. Scientists just can't predict where it'll end up due to the Yarovsky effect. Yet, there are even larger culprits lurking in the dark outskirts of the solar system. In 2021, American astronomers Pedro Bernardinelli and Gary Bernstein ran millions of night sky images through search algorithms over several years and couldn't believe their eyes. It turned out that back in 2014, telescopes captured a mega comet rushing towards us. This is a true planet destroyer with a diameter of at least 120 kilometers. The impact of such a massive celestial body would turn the entire surface of the Earth into a sea of lava and possibly break off a solid piece of our planet. Discovering the mega comet earlier was simply impossible because it had been hiding in the dark outskirts of the solar system in the mysterious Oort cloud for millions of years. However, when astronomers calculated its orbit, they finally sighed with relief. The Bernardelli-Bernstein comet won't venture beyond Saturn's orbit, hypothetically, of course, but that could easily change in the future if the gas giant nudges it from its familiar path. However, with even greater probability, little-known object from the depths of deep space could orchestrate an apocalypse for us. Our sun is surrounded by potentially dangerous neighbors, many of which we were unaware of until recently. Almost every other space-related video on YouTube mentions the nearest star system to us, Alpha Centauri, consisting of 3 stars, 2 sun-like stars, and 1 red dwarf. However, the distance to them is over 4 light-years, which essentially rules out any harmful influence on our solar system. And that would be reassuring if it weren't for the fact that the surrounding stars are constantly moving. In 1916, American astronomer Edward Barnard, while studying photographic plates of the night sky from Harvard University, noticed a faint point moving at an incredibly high speed of more than 10 arcsec. In other words, this exceptional star traverses half the diameter of the full moon in the span of an average human lifetime of 70 years, setting an absolute speed record. As it turns out, the close distance of Barnard's star played a significant role. It's only about 6 light-years away, making it the second closest star to the Sun. While the Alpha Centauri triple system is steadily moving away from us, this high-velocity red dwarf is gradually approaching at a speed of 90 kilometers per second. That's faster than any comet known to us. But interstellar distances are much greater. According to the current calculations of scientists, Barnard's star will come closest to the solar system in the year 11,800, approaching significantly closer than Alpha Centauri is now at a distance of 3.75 light-years. That may seem too far to be actually dangerous, but according to modern astronomical estimates, this is exactly where the actual boundary of the solar system lies. Specifically, it marks the edge of the Oort cloud, where billions of invisible comets are hidden. Scientists don't know the exact size of the Oort cloud, but its radius may range from 2 to 3.2 light-years, and the larger it is, the higher the probability that the gravitational field of the passing star will create chaos in the Oort cloud and unleash several comet killers towards Earth. Moreover, this may have already happened before. In 2013, German astronomer Ralph Deersholz discovered another previously unknown red dwarf located 22 light-years away from Earth. Surprisingly, its velocity was only slightly lower than that of the record-breaking Barnard star. When astronomers used mathematical calculations to rewind time, they were horrified. Nearly all simulations pointed to one conclusion. Approximately 70,000 years ago, Schultz's star passed at a distance of less than 1 light-year from the Sun, right through the Oort cloud. No one can say how it precisely affected the orbits of comets. Therefore, we cannot exclude the possibility that an invisible killer comet is already rushing towards us moments away from putting an end to life on Earth. But what if a planet-like object ventures into our immediate vicinity? Astronomers didn't realize immediately that Schultz's star isn't actually a star, but a binary system. There's an almost invisible enigmatic entity orbiting the red dwarf. That's a brown dwarf that doesn't belong to either stars or planets, and is stuck somewhere in between. The primary red dwarf in this system has a mass roughly 89 times that of Jupiter, just enough to ignite self-sustaining nuclear reactions in its core. However, the brown dwarf, its partner, masses around 65 Jupiters, which is insufficient to ignite the nuclear furnace. Yet, it's too massive to be considered an ordinary gas giant. Scientists once believed brown dwarfs were unique hybrids, but observations in recent decades have shown quite the opposite. For an entire century, the red dwarf, known as Wolf 359, was considered the third closest star to the Sun, located nearly 8 light-years from Earth. However, in 2013, American astronomer Kevin Luhman made a sensational discovery using the WISE Infrared Observatory, forcing an urgent revision of star maps in our neighborhood. Just 6.5 light-years away, he uncovered a binary system of brown dwarfs called Lumen 16, each weighing approximately 30 Jupiters. But the astronomer didn't stop there. A year later, he announced the discovery of yet another brown dwarf, this one much closer than Wolf 359. and this invisible object races across the sky almost as swiftly as a super-speedy Barnard star. Fortunately for us, its trajectory doesn't intersect with ours. But how many more undetected brown dwarfs are hurtling nearby? Modern estimates sound menacing. It appears that the Milky Way harbors anywhere from 25 billion to 100 billion brown dwarfs. Even considering the cosmic distances are simply immense. The trajectory of just one of these objects could eventually intersect not just the outskirts of the solar system, but the orbits of the planets. Imagine a dark gas supergiant pushing Jupiter and Saturn around like bowling pins and causing total planetary chaos. In the best-case scenario, this would mean a radically new orbit for Earth where it would either overheat or freeze. In the worst-case scenario, the brown dwarf would easily devour our planet without a burp. Yet some extreme space objects can potentially harm us from hundreds of light years away. Around the solar system, there are exotic stars whose explosion could wipe out all life on Earth. Astronomers have long been observing the red giant Betelgeuse in the Orion constellation. In space images, it appeared as a strangely blurred yolk. But if we place it in the scale of the solar system, that spot would engulf all the inner planets up to Jupiter. And the size of Betelgeuse tells us one thing. It's nearly exhausted all its fuel for nuclear reactions and will soon meet its demise in a supernova explosion. But when exactly will this happen? And how dangerous is it for us? Until recently, based on periodic pulsations of Betelgeuse, astronomers believed that the cosmic catastrophe would occur in thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. However, in 2023, a team of researchers from Japan and Switzerland reanalyzed all the data and concluded the giant star has very little nuclear fuel left, meaning the count goes on for decades. In other words, within our lifetime, Betelgeuse could explode with a force millions of times greater than the Sun. A new bright star will appear in the sky, visible even during the day, and at night, it'll outshine the full moon. The explosion of Betelgeuse could likely blind a couple of overly sensitive telescopes, but overall, this show will have little impact on Earth. After all, we're at least 460 light-years away from the epicenter, or even 630. But what if cosmic currents carried Betelgeuse into the nearest vicinity of the solar system? In that case, the supernova explosion would not only surpass the brightness of the Sun. From a distance of a few light-years, we would be hit by multiple waves of deadly cosmic radiation. It would be like Chernobyl on a global scale. Similar events might have already occurred in the distant past, causing mass extinctions throughout the planet's history. Unlike red dwarfs, red giants are easily visible through telescopes, so none of them should suddenly come so close to us. Astronomers believe that the minimum safe distance for a supernova where you can witness the spectacle without succumbing to radiation is 160 light-years. But what if I tell you that a new cosmic catastrophe is brewing right inside this boundary? In reality, most of the supernovae that illuminate the Milky Way approximately every 100 years are not explosions of red giants like Betelgeuse. On the contrary, their triggers are some of the smallest known stars, just like the one in Ik Pegasi, a binary system that doesn't receive as much attention as Betelgeuse. Perhaps unjustly. Here, a yellow star, similar to our Sun, has a very compact and dangerous companion, a white dwarf. It's the core of a deceased star with unusual characteristics. Its size is comparable to Earth, but its mass can reach that of the Sun, which means an enormous density. In the Ik Pegasi system, the white dwarf orbits very closely around the main star, closer than Mercury orbits our Sun. The gravity of the white dwarf may be effectively sucking up stellar material from its neighboring star through a cosmic straw. This is a time bomb in space. Once the white dwarf is covered by a sufficiently thick layer of stolen plasma, gravity will compress its core, triggering an incredibly powerful explosion known as a Type 1a supernova. Even from a distance of 154 light-years where Ik Pegasi is located, Earth's ozone layer won't fare well against the bombardment of cosmic rays from the blast wave. And then our own Sun will deliver a major blow to us. You can still compensate for the increased radiation with sunscreen, but you won't be able to apply it to plankton in the upper layers of the oceans. If the Ik Pegasi supernova sufficiently punctures the ozone layer, many marine mammals like whales will have nothing to eat. And once Earth's food chain is disrupted, mass extinction will cascade throughout the planet. But how close are we to such a scenario? Unfortunately, no telescope has been able to photograph the white dwarf in Ik Pegasi due to the overpowering brightness of the main star. So, no one can say for sure how close it is to the actual explosion. However, according to the commonly accepted estimate, the white dwarf hasn't started its feast yet. It'll only begin when the neighboring star itself begins transforming into a red giant. And that will happen billions of years from now, by which time our Pegasus will undoubtedly be at a safe distance from Earth. But even this prediction doesn't account for another threat posed by exploding stars. Approximately 1 million years ago, our distant ancestors witnessed a bright flash in the sky. The supernova itself didn't directly harm Earth. But in 1992, astronomers accidentally discovered a fragment of that very explosion. And it's more like a real space missile. It's a super dense neutron star with a mass of the Sun, but a diameter of just 14 kilometers. At a distance of 400 light-years, it's the closest exotic object of its kind to our solar system. But the most incredible thing is that the supernova explosion 1 million years ago didn't just create a neutron star. It launched into space at a speed of 100 kilometers per second. If such a super-dense celestial body enters the boundaries of our solar system, the consequences will be utterly unpredictable. From a gravitational perspective, this tiny ball is equivalent to another sun, and it would easily pull several planets along with it. Earth, as we know it, wouldn't survive in the orbit of the neutron star. Instead of sunlight, we would be subjected to constant streams of destructive radiation, transforming the surface of our Earth into a radioactive icy desert. However, most likely, the tidal forces of the neutron star would simply grind Earth into pieces, and the resulting ring of debris would eventually fall onto its surface, causing tremendous detonations. Luckily, the nearest killer star is flying by somewhere else, and I will be happy to conclude it here. But considering that neutron stars are extremely difficult to detect due to their faintness, who knows? Perhaps due to a fatal coincidence, an unknown supernova unleashed an invisible death sphere towards us millions of years ago. However, in space, they're even less noticeable and more extreme objects that don't even need to be anywhere near the solar system to inflict a deadly blow upon us. Earth is vulnerable to numerous galactic threats, and we're just beginning to speculate about the nature of many of them. On October 9th, 2022, two observatories monitoring the space in X-rays and gamma rays detected a powerful burst. It was so intense that it instantly overloaded their sensors, pushing them to their maximum values. However, scientists immediately connected multiple observatories on Earth, eventually revealing what it was. Specifically, it was a gamma-ray burst in the Sagitta constellation emanating from an object nearly 2 billion light-years from Earth. It likely originated from a supernova in a distant galaxy we wouldn't even notice. Yet in this case, the dying star was so massive that its explosion collapsed its core not into a neutron star, but into a black hole. The black hole instantly devoured billions of tons of scattered matter all around it and emitted that narrow focus beam of X-rays and gamma rays towards Earth. The precise physical mechanism behind this phenomenon remains unknown, as does the specific reason why this gamma-ray burst was so extraordinarily powerful. Its energy would have been sufficient for the complete life cycle of 1,000 of our suns, and it was at least 70 times brighter than any other gamma-ray burst recorded ever so far. So despite the colossal distance, the destructive beams from this explosion shattered molecules in the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere, much like solar flares do. Not to mention the global disruption of radio navigation systems. If Betelgeuse unleashed a similar gamma-ray burst upon us from a distance of 600 light-year, no one would be left to watch this video. The deadly radiation would scorch 3 arctas of Earth's surface to a crisp for 10 consecutive hours. Anyone unfortunate enough to be outside or near window would receive a fatal dose of radiation akin to those ill-fated firefighters at Chernobyl. And even if there were thousands of light-years between us and the source of such a death beam, things wouldn't be significantly better. But perhaps we don't need to imagine such horrific consequences. Potentially lethal gamma-ray bursts aren't only produced by black holes in distant galaxies, but also by extremely exotic celestial bodies in our own galaxy. The WR104 object may look like a galaxy, but it's actually a unique star with a spiral structure spanning almost 8,500 light-years. More precisely, it's a Wolf-Rayet star, roughly 30 times more massive than our Sun and 120,000 times brighter. Instead of burning hydrogen in its nuclear furnace, it consumes helium, generating so much energy that the star's outer layers literally shed off, forming a spiral. Due to such extravagance, Wolf-Rayet stars have very short lifespans, only a few hundred 000 years. and WR-104 seems to be approaching its grand finale. Apart from the usual supernova explosion, which won't affect us from such a distance, the Wolf-Rayet star is also capable of a powerful gamma-ray burst judging by the beautiful symmetrical spiral we observe. Earth is precisely in its line of fire aligned with the pole of WR-10004 from which the deadly beam will erupt. In the worst-case scenario, a significant portion of our planet's surface won't just be burned, but utterly obliterated. Astronomers aren't particularly fond of this scenario. So, for the past 15 years, they've been desperately trying to measure the orientation of WR-10004 as accurately as possible. Based on various estimates, we're definitely not staring down the barrel of the death beam. The deviation ranges from 3 to 30 degrees. But even if it's at a minimum, Earth will still be grazed by the edge of the gamma-ray burst cone, which in itself guarantees mass extinction and full cancer hospitals for many decades to come. We can only hope that by the time this Wolf-Rayet star collapses, the solar system itself will have slipped out of its crosshaze or that the gamma-ray burst just fails to occur. But even that is not the most terrifying aspect of our galactic neighborhood. This is Markarian 231, the closest quasar to Earth, which means it's a galaxy with an active core. It emits energy not in visible light, but in ultraviolet and X-ray radiation, even from a distance of 580 million light-year. This object appears incredibly bright. According to scientists' calculations, the core of this relatively small galaxy emits thousands of times more energy than the Milky Way. Such activity is produced by a supermassive black hole massing 150 million times our Sun's mass, devouring vast amounts of interstellar matter. It spirals into a gigantic accretion disk at nearly the speed of light, and the immense friction turns the matter into super bright plasma. Some astronomers believe there's another black hole orbiting this one with a mass of 4 million suns further fueling this eerie cosmic reactor. It appears to be the result of collision between two galaxies. And now the intense ultraviolet radiation from the quasar renders space sterile for tens of thousands of light years around, affecting all stars and planets. Luckily, Markarian 231 poses no threat to us, but some astronomers consider it a dreadful omen. However, just right now, the supermassive black hole at the Milky Way center, Sagittarius A star, is on a diet and not spewing radiation. But that could change. In 5 billion years, our galaxy awaits a collision with Andromeda, which could trigger the same process we observe in Markarian 231. The coincidences with this quasar are impressive. At the center of the newly formed galaxy, there will be a strikingly similar pair of supermassive black holes, one massing 230 million suns from Andromeda and slightly over 4 million suns from the Milky Way. And if the collision attracts enough interstellar matter to them, the quasar will ignite not hundreds of millions of light years away from the solar system, but just 26,000. And then our entire sky won't just be incredibly bright, but fatally irradiating. By then, Earth may no longer be habitable due to our sun's demise. But whatever other stellar systems our distant descendants may inhabit, they will bask in harsh radiation for millions of years with nowhere to hide. Still, with a quick wit, any danger can be turned to our advantage. In May of 2023, scientists from the California Institute of Technology tested the first prototypes of solar panels designed to collect energy from the space surrounding Earth and transmit it to the surface. The next step is conducting field tests in orbit. But the technology looks promising. So what if our distant descendants manage to create a protective shield around their world using these panels? They would not only be able to deflect gamma bursts and shield themselves from quasar radiation, but also convert deadly rays into useful energy. Perhaps the future lies not only in Dyson spheres around stars, but in more modest protective shells around inhabited planets. The key is to ensure that all this beauty isn't shattered by some daredevil asteroid. So, what threats from the vicinity of the solar system do you consider the most dangerous?